What would you do if the person you trusted the most, the one you loved, betrayed you in the worst way imaginable? By the end of this story, you'll learn the shocking truth behind a betrayal so unexpected, it shattered a family's trust and left everyone questioning their own reality. It all began with an innocent neighborly friendship, nothing more than a friendly hello and a helping hand when needed. For Anna and her husband, John, their life seemed like a picture-perfect family. But this story takes a twist. A betrayal that started as something so simple, so harmless, quickly became something no one could have seen coming. The line between friendship and infidelity was crossed. Stay with us, because by the end of this, the truth will be more shocking than anything you could ever imagine. In the beginning, Anna and John were the epitome of a loving couple. They built their lives together, sharing dreams of a future filled with laughter, love, and family. But as time passed, cracks began to appear, and those dreams started to fade. Anna, once the center of their home, felt a growing emptiness inside. She longed for connection, for someone who truly saw her. John, her husband, the man who promised to be there through thick and thin, became a ghost in the house. He was a hardworking man, driven by his career, consumed by the long hours and responsibilities that piled higher with each passing day. But in his absence, something was changing within Anna. Anna, a mother whose heart had always been full of love for her children, found herself alone. The long nights and quiet mornings turned into a suffocating silence. She'd sit at the dinner table, the once lively conversations now replaced by the sounds of clinking silverware and the ticking of the clock on the wall. The emotional distance between them grew, unspoken words and unexpressed feelings creating an invisible wall between them. John's focus was always on his work, while Anna, feeling more and more isolated, began to drift. But little did she know, the distance she felt would soon lead her to an unexpected source of comfort. Enter Mark, the neighbor. At first, he appeared to be the friendly face everyone needs. He was charismatic, always there with a smile, and ready to lend a hand whenever needed. He seemed genuine, offering Anna support when her marriage began to falter. His kindness wasn't grandiose or demanding. It was subtle, something Anna didn't realize she needed until it was too late. Mark's presence became a comfort to Anna. At first, it was innocent, just conversations about the weather or the kids. But as time went on, their talks deepened. Mark listened to her, truly listened in a way that John hadn't for months. He paid attention, offering words of encouragement, making her feel seen again. For the first time in a long while, Anna felt heard. As Mark's friendship grew, so did Anna's dependency on him. She started spending more time with him, feeling less and less like an outsider in her own home. The conversations that once took place across the dinner table with John now occurred over coffee with Mark. At first, it was nothing more than an innocent connection, the kind of bond that anyone could understand. Meanwhile, John remained unaware, buried in his work, oblivious to the shifting dynamics in his own home. He came and went, his presence little more than a formality. When he was home, he was distant, his mind often consumed with things that didn't include the family. He never noticed how Anna's eyes seemed to search for something more, or how she'd linger in conversation with Mark just a little longer than before. And as days passed, the tension between Anna and John grew. The smiles and polite exchanges they once shared turned into silent, hollow gestures. Anna longed for something that John couldn't provide, and Mark, ever the attentive neighbor, seemed to be the only one who could. The line between comfort and betrayal is thin. Anna's growing emotional detachment from John had created an empty space that Mark, her charming neighbor, began to fill. What had started as friendly conversations quickly evolved into something deeper, something Anna hadn't expected. But it wasn't just a fleeting friendship. It was an escape from the loneliness she felt at home, a feeling that was now consuming her thoughts. Anna's once vibrant heart, filled with love for her family, had started to wane under the weight of isolation. Mark, with his gentle attentiveness, became the one person who truly listened to her. The conversations that once seemed innocent began to grow in intensity. She confided in him about her frustrations, how John no longer seemed to notice her, how their once close bond had faded into routine. Mark listened with a compassion that seemed genuine, making Anna feel important, seen, in a way John no longer could. As they spent more time together, the connection between Anna and Mark deepened. What began as a harmless friendship, a simple relief from her emotional strain, slowly morphed into something else. Anna felt the weight of guilt every time she met Mark, but there was also a thrill, an excitement she hadn't felt in years. In Mark's eyes, she saw admiration, something she had missed for far too long. With each passing day, their moments together became more intimate, more urgent. The spark of attraction, buried beneath the years of marriage, had reignited with Mark. And slowly, imperceptibly, she allowed herself to fall. But guilt lingered, like a shadow at the edge of her conscience. Anna would return home after their meetings, her heart racing with the secrecy she carried. She'd glance at old family photos, the smiles frozen in time, and feel a pang of regret. How could she betray the family she had built, the love she once had for John? Yet, the pull of Mark's presence, his attention, was hard to resist. She was torn, caught between her love for her children, her devotion to her family, and the allure of Mark's affection. The emotional war inside her was becoming unbearable. Mark, however, wasn't just offering comfort anymore. His gestures grew bolder, his words more persuasive. What began as casual meetings escalated into stolen moments of intimacy. He knew how to push her buttons, to make her feel as if she deserved more, as if John had failed her, as if she had every right to seek solace elsewhere. Mark's charm was intoxicating, and the way he looked at her, with an intensity that John had long forgotten, fed Anna's insecurities. Her mind was clouded, and she found herself justifying the affair to herself as a means of escape, a way to feel alive again, to feel wanted. But the more Anna rationalized her actions, the more the tension within her grew. Every glance from Mark made her heart beat faster, but every return to her family felt like a burden. She began to feel like an actress in her own life, playing a role she no longer recognized. Her interactions with John became colder, more mechanical, as if she were living a double life, each day a struggle to maintain the facade of normalcy. Mark's persistence increased, and with it, his manipulations began to surface. His once gentle words now carried an undercurrent of possessiveness, a demand for more of Anna's time, more of her affection. He wasn't content with just being a shoulder to lean on, he wanted her completely. And in a moment of weakness, Anna found herself unable to refuse him. What had started as a small escape was now a deep entanglement, a connection that couldn't be easily severed. Anna's world had become a whirlwind of confusion, torn between the love she still felt for her family and the growing desire to be with Mark. She was trapped in her own choices, unable to untangle the web she had spun. And with each passing day, the stakes grew higher. In the shadows of Anna's troubled marriage, the cracks had been forming for years. She had tried to fill the void with love, with effort, with hope, but the warmth had faded. She felt invisible in her own home. Her husband, John, was always distracted, always consumed by work, leaving Anna to face her loneliness alone. But when Mark, her charming neighbor, stepped in, he offered a kind of validation she had longed for. And in that validation, Anna found herself at a crossroads. It wasn't just physical attraction that drew Anna to Mark. It was the way he listened, the way he understood her in a way no one else seemed to. He knew the words to say that made her feel special, that made her feel seen again. It wasn't something she planned, it wasn't even something she thought she wanted at first. But little by little, Mark became a comforting presence, a much-needed escape from the emotional isolation at home. What began as a simple conversation turned into something Anna couldn't control. She justified her growing attachment to Mark by convincing herself that she deserved this. She deserved to be happy. After all, hadn't John neglected her for so long? Hadn't he ignored her needs, emotionally and physically? She found solace in the thought that maybe she wasn't the problem, that her marriage wasn't working because John had stopped trying. And in Mark, she found the connection she thought she would never feel again. But Mark wasn't just being supportive. He had his own agenda. Slowly, subtly, he began to manipulate Anna, playing on her vulnerabilities. He made her feel understood, even when he had no real investment in her emotional well-being. His attentiveness, his words, became more intentional. The small gestures of care, things John no longer offered, now felt like a lifeline to Anna. Mark was not just comforting her. He was slowly taking control, drawing her deeper into his orbit. And with each moment they shared, the affair grew. Anna tried to fight the guilt that gnawed at her, but it was becoming harder to ignore. She told herself it was temporary, that she deserved to feel happy, wanted alive. After all, she wasn't asking for a divorce. She wasn't even sure she wanted one. But the longer she stayed with Mark, the further she drifted from John. The gulf between her and her husband widened, and the more she justified the affair, the more desperate she became to hide it. The lies were piling up, and the guilt was no longer a quiet voice in her head. It was a scream, one that drowned out her sense of reason. But John, unaware of the storm brewing at home, continued to focus on his work. He was oblivious to the subtle shifts in Anna's behavior, the long stares into space, the late-night texts, the secretive phone calls. His mind was on the job, on deadlines, on the things that filled his day. He hadn't noticed the distance growing between them, hadn't seen the cracks widening in their relationship. As far as he was concerned, everything was fine. After all, he worked hard to provide for their family. He wasn't the one at fault. And yet, Anna couldn't help but feel increasingly alone in a marriage that had no emotional foundation left. John's absence was not just physical, it was emotional, too. As he focused on his career, Anna's emotional needs went unmet, and Mark seemed more than willing to fill that void. She started to believe, deep down, that this affair was the only thing keeping her from completely losing herself. It was the escape she needed to survive, even if it was at the cost of her marriage. But as the affair intensified, so did Mark's control. What had once been simple affection became something more suffocating, more demanding. Mark began to push Anna further, asking for more of her time, more of her attention. She could feel the walls closing in, the pressure mounting, but she felt powerless to stop it. She didn't know if she was acting out of love, out of need, or out of a desire to regain the power she had lost in her marriage. There's a moment in every story, in every relationship, when the truth can no longer stay hidden. It's the moment when everything you've been trying to bury, every lie you've told yourself, comes crashing down. For Anna and John, that moment was approaching fast, and neither of them were prepared for what was about to unfold. It started like any other ordinary day. John, exhausted from work, walked in the front door at an unexpected time, earlier than usual, not expecting to find anything unusual. But when he glanced at Anna's phone, left carelessly on the kitchen counter, something caught his eye, a message. A simple name on the screen.
Mark.
The same Mark who had been their neighbor, their friend. The same Mark who had been so helpful, so kind. The words on the screen were innocent enough at first glance, but it was the context that sent a jolt through John's chest. The timing of the messages, the tone, something didn't sit right. His heart pounded as his eyes narrowed, the creeping sense of suspicion growing stronger with each passing second. He knew something was off, but he had never imagined it could be this. As Anna entered the room, John stood frozen, his eyes locked on the phone. The silence between them was thick, suffocating. Anna's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't anticipated this, hadn't expected John to return home so soon. The panic set in immediately. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, and she knew this was the moment. John's voice broke the silence, cold and clipped. "What's this?" Anna's breath caught in her throat. She tried to find the words, to explain, to deny, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. She could see the anger building in John's eyes, the betrayal reflected in every line of his face. She had hoped she could control it, hoped she could somehow keep this part of her life hidden forever. But now it was out in the open, raw, unavoidable. With a tremble in her voice, Anna tried to explain. but the guilt and shame were written all over her face.
John.
I didn't. But she couldn't finish. John's anger flared, and his voice broke through her words like a thunderclap. How long? Anna couldn't look him in the eye. She felt as though the walls were closing in around her. The weight of her actions, the lies she had told, the man she had betrayed him with, it was all crashing down at once. And yet, there was no turning back. No way to undo the hurt, the damage she had caused. Months, Anna finally whispered. It's been months. John's face turned pale, his fists clenched at his sides. He looked at Anna as if seeing her for the first time, his wife, the mother of his children, the woman he trusted above all others, the woman he had called a friend, whose pain he had tried to ease. He had trusted her, and he had trusted Mark. Now, both of them had shattered that trust in the most unimaginable way. You, John said, his voice low and shaking with rage. You've been with him, behind my back, all this time. The words felt like daggers. Anna couldn't speak. She wanted to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, but the weight of her own guilt choked her. What could she say? How could she explain that in her loneliness, in her emotional desperation, she had made a choice she now regretted? There were no words to undo the harm she had done. Mark wasn't just a stranger. He wasn't just an affair. He was a person John had invited into their home, someone he had shared dinners with, someone he had trusted. And now, that trust had been shattered. The betrayal cut deeper than Anna could have ever anticipated. She had thought, at first, that she was seeking solace in a friend, but now she saw it for what it truly was: manipulation. John's emotions were raw, his heart broken. His anger wasn't just for the affair. It was for the years of deceit, for the betrayal of friendship, for the fact that the one person he had counted on to stand by him had fallen so far. The rawness of it all was almost too much to bear. Anna broke down in front of him, tears streaming down her face. She had never imagined it would end like this. She had never wanted to hurt him this way. But now, there was no turning back. The truth had been laid bare, and the walls of their marriage were crumbling under the weight of it. Mark, the man who had once been a friend, had become a ghost in the shadows. His manipulation had played a larger role than Anna had realized. It wasn't just about offering comfort. It was about taking control, pushing her into a corner where the affair was the only escape she could see. And now that everything had come to light, Anna could see the depth of Mark's deceit as well. He had known exactly what he was doing. He had played her, just like he had played John. But for now, it didn't matter. The damage was done. The trust, the love, the life they had built. Everything was shattered in that single moment of discovery. What would happen next? Could their marriage survive this betrayal? Could they rebuild what had been torn apart? Or was this the end of everything they had known? When the truth comes to light, there is no escaping its consequences. The air becomes thick with the weight of realization, of shattered bonds. For Anna and John, the betrayal that had been hidden in shadows now lay bare, and with it, the slow and painful unraveling of everything they once held dear. In the days that followed, John found himself lost in a sea of conflicting emotions. Anger raged within him, but it was soon eclipsed by a quiet sadness. He could not comprehend how something so monumental could be hidden from him for so long. The life he had built, his home, his family, his trust, had all been upended in an instant. Each memory, each shared laugh, now felt tainted by the betrayal that he could not shake. Anna, on the other hand, was left alone in the silence of her own regret. She had never imagined it would come to this. Her affair with Mark, once an escape, once a moment of fleeting happiness, had now become the source of her deepest shame. Yet, despite the weight of her guilt, a part of her still struggled to justify her actions. Her marriage with John had felt like a hollow shell for so long. She had convinced herself that she deserved to be happy, that she needed something more. But now, as she sat in the wreckage of her own making, the truth was unavoidable. She tried to explain, to defend herself, but it felt like no words could make it right. No apology could undo the damage. She felt torn between the desire to rebuild, to reclaim what they once had, and the fear that it was already too late, too broken to mend. The silence in their home was deafening. What had once been a place of love and laughter now felt empty. The children, unaware of the specifics, could still sense the shift in the atmosphere. The warmth had gone, replaced by tension, by a heavy quiet that hung over every room. John and Anna, once inseparable, now drifted further apart with every passing day. In the evenings, they sat in separate rooms, lost in their own thoughts. John stared at the old family photos that once made him smile. Now, they served as painful reminders of the life he had loved, a life that seemed so distant. He couldn't bring himself to look at them for too long. Each photo, each smile, was a cruel echo of a reality he couldn't return to. Meanwhile, Anna sat alone in the bedroom, staring out the window, her thoughts a whirlwind of regret. What had she been seeking? Was the fleeting comfort of Mark's attention worth this? She had never expected her actions to destroy her family, yet here she was, grappling with the destruction of everything she had known. In these quiet moments, the weight of their choices settled heavily between them. John couldn't help but wonder if he could ever trust Anna again. Could they rebuild from this? Could forgiveness find its way back into their hearts? Or was this the point of no return? The questions echoed through the space between them, unanswered, unresolved. And then, there were the children, too young to understand the intricacies of their parents' heartbreak, but not immune to the change in the air. The tension between Anna and John was palpable, their interactions strained, mechanical. The family that had once been whole, that had once shared joyous moments, was now a fractured version of itself. The damage had seeped deep into the fabric of their lives, and the ripple effect spread beyond just Anna and John. Now, as the dust settles and the weight of betrayal presses down on both Anna and John, the question remains, what comes next? We've watched as their lives have unraveled, as the pain of secrets revealed has shattered their once sturdy foundation. But the most important question is, what would you have done in Anna's shoes? Imagine standing where she stood, torn between the comfort of fleeting attention and the crumbling world of your marriage. Could you have turned away from the affair? Or would you have justified your actions as Anna did? And for John, if you were in his position, faced with the heart-wrenching truth of betrayal from both your wife and a trusted friend, would you find the strength to forgive? Or would this be a deal breaker, an unrepairable crack in a relationship once thought unshakable? The emotional toll of betrayal is different for everyone, and we want to know what you think. Have you ever experienced something like this? What would your response be? If this story moved you, if you were gripped by the raw emotion of these characters' choices, now is the time to speak up. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss this story together. And if you want to keep uncovering real stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you never miss a shocking revelation. Our journey into the truth continues, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. If this story shocked you, if it made you question what you would do in a similar situation, show your support by liking the video. Let us know, how would you react to betrayal like this? Your voice matters, and we want to hear it.